The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome. I've got a little noise playing in the background here because we are live on Facebook. If you want to see me on Facebook with a baby face, that's the noise that's playing. We're double live. Now, normally we play double live in both places, but it's through one thing, and for whatever reason, that is not connecting with Facebook Live. So this morning, just for this intro, for those of you who watch, yes, there I am, on Facebook, we want to make sure you don't miss the show because it's going to be a good show. So we're telling you, as soon as you can, move over to our YouTube channel to watch us live, although we will replay the entire show on Facebook Live later, but it won't be live. Does that make sense? In any case, we're going to be with you for the next 2 hours and we want to interact with you. That's really the whole name of the game here. So Samantha's going to show you on the YouTube page some of the different ways that you can connect with us. While she does that, I'm going to tell those of you watching on Facebook that you can get a hold of us in a lot of different ways. Our YouTube channel, if you go to youtube.com/autism-live, then you can connect with us there. We play live there all the time, but we're also live on Twitter today. So you can check us out there. If you want to go to our homepage, we're live there too, autism-live.com, and that has the live feature. It's free. Everything that we do is free, which is a really lovely thing. It's a series of white boxes that if you find the one that says your question, your comment, all you have to do is type and hit enter. You don't have to log in. You don't have to have a credit card. That music is going to drive me slowly to drink, right? And I don't drink. So in any case, all you have to do is type and hit enter. You don't have to give us a password. You don't have to prove that you're not a bot. It's a really easy way to connect with us. Again, reminding you, if you're just tuning in on Facebook, to please switch over to watch us on YouTube so that you don't have the crazy little baby face that I have going on, because we're going to be ending our stream on Facebook Live here in just a minute. And coming up in just a minute, we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. We're doing an oldie but a goodie because she's traveling right now. But it's a really wonderful way to watch and learn. And then in the next hour, we're live again with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And if we're not live on Facebook, then we may come back and double stream again, but with no baby face because it gets old fast. In any case, great guests today and great in the news. So last warning, those of you watching on Facebook, switch to YouTube. And I'll be back with you at the end of the hour with Nancy Allspaw Jackson. So keep watching on YouTube. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're so lucky because we have with us right now Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She is a true expert in the field of autism, having worked in this field for more than 30 years. She's a remarkable human being and a service to our community because really, beyond being an expert, and I believe the preeminent expert in autism, she's also a visionary. She is so kind and compassionate and interested in what our community needs and takes a look at all the things that are happening and helps us to be prepared because changes have come and changes are still coming. So we salute you and thank you for being here. Good morning.
Always pleasant to be here.
Well, it's our thrill always. We do like to always remind everybody, though, that there is no expert in any field that could give individual specific advice in this format. So what that means is that you'll write in your question and have an opportunity to hear from Dr. Grant Boucher about some ideas that she has on that general topic. And what it will do is help you. We've heard from, in fact, we have a comment today from a viewer about some advice that you gave that proved to be very helpful. We hear all the time because you help us to think of things in a different way, to be able to advocate for ourselves, to know what question to ask when we go see an expert who actually has eyes on the situation, which is what's needed for an individual specific advice.
That's great.
So, so just know that that's what this hour is about, but it's just so enlightening always. In fact, maybe we should jump right to that. The parent who wrote in said, "Hi, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. Thank you for the headset recommendation for working on thunder. It came in handy when our smoke alarm went off in the middle of the night. Instead of freaking out, he helped himself to his headset and walked out of the room to find what was going on.
Oh my gosh.
And even offered to help turn off that false alarm.
I love
the
it.
answers you give to all the questions are so helpful, and thank you so much, ladies." And that comes from our fabulous, we refer to her as the haircut mom.
That's awesome.
We have, since we want to preserve people's anonymity always, we have some viewers that we have pet names for. We have the haircut mom, we have strawberry mom, we West Virginia mom.
Absolutely.
They're all good friends of ours at this point. So in any case, I'm thrilled that that's what happened, and
That's
just
so cool.
another example
I
of
just
how you
love
shed
it.
light on things
No,
that are
that's
so
so
helpful.
great. It's just remembering that our kids actually have a really hard time with sensory input. That's really important. But how awesome. What a great young man.
Yes, what an amazing thing. And also, can I just say that sometimes as a parent, it just seems that the problem that your child is having, especially when it's sensory in nature, it seems so unknown, so foreign, so overwhelming, and you think, this is just how it is, and what will become of all of us?
Yeah.
And you give us something to do that it's like, oh, well, gosh, that works.
Right. Well, because, like a lot of times I think to myself, like, how does it feel to actually experience autism? And it's funny, a couple of days ago, my daughter, this is the first year that any of my children are in a public school, so I didn't know that they do this in public school, but I just found out that they have this thing called every 15 minutes. Do you know about every 15 minutes?
No.
Okay, so it's for 11th and 12th graders only, and they do a full-on replication of what happens every 15 minutes is someone dies from a drunk driving accident. So they do a full-on replication that is pre-planned with a bunch of kids. So a certain of their classmates are planned to be the victims. And what they do is every 15 minutes during the morning hours, they will announce that so-and-so died in a car accident. And it goes on until there's like 20 of them or something.
Wow.
And then in the afternoon, they will do a full reenactment. The police are involved, the hospitals are involved, so the police will actually bring out, I couldn't believe it, Charlie taped all this, they bring out cars that are smashed, and there's like the students with paint and everything are hanging out of it. It's like, it's really brutal, right? And police comes, takes the driver, does a test, then takes the driver, then ambulance comes and takes the others, and like and they actually have a funeral. The parents of the kids come and speak at the funeral. Like it's something you will never forget. Like when she was showing it to me, I was thinking to myself, first of all, I'll never forget this. It's great for 11th and 12th year olds, because the 12th graders, because they're just driving, they're just starting to drive.
And to bring that reality to them,
right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, and unfortunately I just found out about this, but there's not enough time this year. But, every year for Autism Awareness Month, April, we do a bunch of stuff. This year, we've partnered up with Chuck E. Cheese, of course, and they're doing sensory-friendly Chuck E. Cheese days, which is great. And then we're also doing training for first responders, and then we're going to schools and doing anti-bullying training. And along that line, because to me, that's a really, really important one. It happens a lot. It's not even intentional bullying. I think it's just that other kids really, and I see this with all my kids' friends and all the kids that have grown up in my house, they just don't know enough about autism, so they don't know how to approach it, you know? So when they see someone who's autistic, they will avoid, right? And that's the worst. I mean, that's the last thing we want. For our kids, we want them to engage, right? So I was thinking of this concept and thinking, how can we do it for autism? What can we do for people to experience what autism is, really? And the first thing that came to mind was sensory input, right?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing you can really, I mean, honestly, if you take anyone, it's funny because this also happens to individuals with schizophrenia, but you take anyone and you give them really high sounds that are very disturbing, and you also give them skewed vision, like let's say, prism glasses or something, and you tell them they're not allowed to talk for the course of a day or an hour, they will experience a very, very small portion of what our kids go through every single day. And with that, it'll help them understand why our kids behave the way they do, why it's so hard for our kids to interact socially. And I was, I feel like we need to do something to help other kids understand what autism, the experience of autism is like. So that first of all, they become more comfortable, familiar with it, and also so they can help. Like, this young man, great. I had a child who in school every hour, he would be terrified because he knew the bell is coming at the end of the hour. Like, imagine if the school was just smart enough to, allow him to have headphones,
Exactly. A small little tweak of a thing.
Something.
That unless I think about Temple Grandin when the whole Fukushima nuclear power plant happened. And Temple said, you know what, if a person with autism had been in charge of building, that would never have happened. Because we have a different view of things and people can't see things the way we do. Sometimes that's of a benefit to them.
Absolutely.
Other times it is not.
That's right.
And it really is incumbent upon those of us who don't have autism to try to take a perspective of somebody who is on the spectrum. But I think you're really onto something. I know as a mom, all I wanted when Jem was little was to crawl inside his head and see the world he did. If I could just do that, I would have paid whatever there was. There wasn't much, but I would have paid all the shekels that I had because I wanted to see it from his point of view.
Right.
I love that he can tell me now some things.
Right.
If I figure out the right question to ask, it's so freeing. So to be able to experience that. They also have now men can experience labor. They have a whole suit that they can put on.
Right.
Because I think
that's so
you
cool.
can be compassionate, but until you have felt it,
Yeah.
then you go, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a wonderful
I
thing.
just hope that if we do something like this next year, like experiencing autism, something like that it doesn't come across as offensive to individuals who are actually affected by autism, because there's no way you can replicate it, but you could, just the sensory aspects of it, you might be able to replicate, and the fact that the vast majority of the individuals have a difficult time expressive communication. So, I mean, those are the only things you can really replicate. You can't really have someone experience what it's like, but it's something close to it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we are going to be back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. Now, you know that you can write in your questions, and I love to pick questions from you, and we're going to do more of your questions in just a minute. But I had a question for Dr. Grant Pichet this morning. Like all of you, I've been watching the news in the last 24 hours and have seen the story of the 13-year-old in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport who he had left his backpack in his knapsack, and I think that's part of the reason why it was, that's what I mean, yes, computer. Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason why he was singled out. But it escalated into him having to have a full pat-down search. 13 years old, has sensory processing disorder. Mom was understandably very upset, videotaped it. It's all over the news right now. And even this morning on the Today Show, they were interviewing the young man, and he was saying how confusing it was to him that he's always been told, you know, you don't let people touch you there. And here you are standing in a public place and having this happen. And, you know, I will say we need our airports to be safe. I mean, of course, that's a priority. And I'm sure that that official was not loving that he was having to do this in front of the world either. But it really brought home for me as the mother of a young man. I've been in that airport before and had them want to send my very tall 13-year-old, he was 12 then, through the one
body scanner.
The body scanner that
which
none
is
of us,
pure X-ray.
Yeah, which none of us particularly would choose for our kids, right? And I kind of was balking at it and saying, you know, I don't want him to do that. Can't we do something else? And this woman got in my face and said, oh, we'll give him a pat down, you know, and it'll be the most thorough pat down. And I went, no, send him through the scanner. But it concerns me. And this morning, I said to Jem, I want you to watch this. I want you to see this videotape. This young man didn't do anything wrong, but this could happen. I would certainly advocate for it not to happen to you. But, and I drove to work thinking I really wanted to ask you about this because I think we need to prepare our kids for these kinds of things. And how do you prepare them?
I mean, it's easy. The how is not as, it's very easy if we could predict all the possible situations that could happen. And that's the problem. The problem, I think, is not that, you know, yes, we have to prepare our kids and perhaps we just tell them that there will be situations where this type of thing happens. But really, if you really want to prepare them, then you have to kind of make assumptions about various environments and procedures that could potentially go this way. Okay. You know, the problem here is there's not, I mean, and I'm certain this is the issue, there's not enough training provided to our TSA folks, right? So they're told a certain set of black and white rules. There's no question about it. I mean, sometimes I see this even at CARD now that we're at like 3,000 employees. You make a rule that's intended to safeguard our clients or something like that, and someone goes over and beyond and like just really doesn't look at the gray and is very black and white about it and says, no, we never can do this, you know, and it's like, no, actually in this particular situation, you can make an exception. You know, an example is, for instance, we tell our folks you can't use your cell phones, right? Because we don't want our employees using their personal cell phones. And there was a situation where a parent had a child with seizures and had or epilepsy or diabetes, I don't remember, it was some medical issue, and had sent the child to our center and then wanted a phone number to be able to call to remind them of something. And nobody would give her the cell phone number, you know, and I was thinking, like, you guys, this is an exception, you know? And the same thing is happening here, I think, is that perhaps, and of course, depending on the functional level of the child, like the parent doesn't want to say, oh, he has autism maybe, or something to single him out even more. And even if the parent did say that, I'm not sure the TSA agents would even know that there's a sensory component. That maybe it's not comfortable for this individual for us to pat him down like this.
And she did say that she was trying to tell them that. But when you're in that moment, I know when you're in that moment, I think they've been trained to, you know, people say everything under the sun, so they're not really listening. Well, okay, so this takes me for a moment, I mean, and this is my personal opinion, because I also often observe TSA and how they treat people, and I don't like it. So
My personal opinion is that when you put on, there's this very famous study in psychology called the Zimbardo Prison Study. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes.
Zimbardo Prison Study was done at Stanford. It's a very cool study, actually, where he basically took a bunch of friends. They were friends in high school, like they were in college, and they were friends. And he just randomly split them in half, and half of the people became prisoners, and half of the people became guards. And this study, it was an actual study, and it was in the locker area down underneath of Stanford University. And it became the relationship, the way the guards treated the prisoners, their own friends, over the course of, I think, 2.5 weeks, became so bad that they had to discontinue the study. It was supposed to go for 6 weeks. They literally had to discontinue because they were becoming extremely abusive.
Yeah.
Movies have been made about this experiment.
It's the thing that proves that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly. And just a uniform has a huge amount. There's a ton of studies showing the effects of just wearing a uniform. And it has such an incredible dominant effect. And the TSA are, generally speaking, I don't think there's a requirement for any kind of higher education to become TSA. And you are in a uniform, and you absolutely have a lot of power at that moment because of the fact that your job is to ensure the safety. So there's not a whole lot of information that goes into like how you should treat people with different disabilities, or the elderly, or young or mothers traveling with 5 kids, or none of that is ever said to anyone, and these are not individuals who will figure that out. So often you see this kind of behavior just because there are some TSA folks that are just rude. They're plain rude, and it's because of that uniform. I'm pretty sure if you sat next to that individual in church on the weekend, they would be a different person.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
In that uniform, they become highly assertive and aggressive. So how do you prepare your child? I mean, the same way, I think that's why we're focused on teaching. In fact, thank you for bringing this up, because first responders, TSA should be in that group.
I was just going to say, I would be happy to reach out and see if I can find somebody and say, let's work on some training. And this would be a good
that
way
would
to
be
do
amazing. We'd love to do that for the TSA all over the country, because honestly, if we could just give them some feedback on how to handle this, I'm sure that they would respond to it. I just don't think they know. And for our kids, I think really the only lesson that we can give them in preparation is just to be a little bit cautious, to exercise caution around individuals with uniforms.
Okay.
While they are intended to protect us, they are also people who have a certain level of power.
Yes.
I mean, we all, let's face it, it's like we all have a certain anxiety when a cop comes up to you or something like that. So, I think we need to just teach our kids to really pay very close attention to the individual in a uniform and see what they're saying.
Yeah. And even, just as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about the fact that when you first go up to TSA and you have to have your ID and everything out, and they ask you a question.
Yeah.
That's like a screening question. And over the years, I've said to Jem, you have to have it together.
Right.
You have to have it together. Now he's old enough that he holds his own ID.
Right.
And the first thing I say is, this is my son. He's whatever his age is, because he's always looked much older.
Right.
And I don't say anything else and look to see how he does. When Jem was littler, when they would ask him a question, sometimes it would take him a while to answer and he wouldn't necessarily make eye contact. And then I would get tense thinking, which is not, all of that reading to that TSA agent is not the best thing. Now I always remind him as we're going up, make sure you follow all the rules, make sure you make eye contact, make sure you answer them when they talk to you. And
I think a parent, if you have a child who has a little, is more disabled because of autism, you should tell the TSA agent.
I agree.
I really do think that it's important to tell them, because aside from the fact that I never really want to label our kids, I just do think that it produces a little bit more caution on their part in terms of how they deal with your child.
Absolutely. I've even heard of one parent who called the airport ahead of time and said, I'm coming. My child has autism, and so we're going to be coming through the TSA. And what happened was that they made sure that there was a supervisor there at that time.
That's great.
I think that is a great, in that circumstance. I don't think you're always going to be met with great stuff.
Here's the other thing. You can absolutely call the airline and request assistance getting through.
Oh,
so that
great.
you definitely can do, and it's their job. They will provide it, just like they provide a wheelchair.
Okay.
They will provide an individual who will go with you and will actually walk through and will then assist and kind of make sure nobody treats you poorly.
Okay, great, good to know. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more of your questions, I promise. Stick with us.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of this with all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago. There were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, and at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, for me, it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads? It is just, and I feel like, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grampichet. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grampichet.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grampichet. I want to go to a question that somebody emailed me, and that's one of the other ways you can get a hold of us is you can email. If you've got a longer question in particular, you can email me. My email is s.penrod, Penrod, at autism-live.com, and that's S as in Sam, .penrod. I know some of you are listening on iTunes, and it's hard to hear what I'm S as in Sam. All right, they wrote in and said, "Hi Shannon, I'm a mom of 2 girls, one with autism. She's 3.5 years old. We're living in Australia. My question is, recently I came to know about ABA. I attended an ABA program 3 days through ABIA Center in Melbourne.
ABAI.
Do you think that's what it is, ABAI?
Well, ABAI,
The international program.
yeah, I don't know.
I would
Keep
assume
going.
ABAI, but it says ABIA. I don't know.
Yeah.
In Melbourne. Now we have found a program supervisor. Unfortunately, it's hard to find a private therapist. My program supervisor told me that the therapist and I do the program together. Can a parent alone do the ABA program intensively for 25 to 30 hours? Is it as effective as a therapist when they do it? At present, I'm doing 15 to 20 hours of therapy with my daughter.
Wow.
I have a supervisor who writes programs for me. Can I apply for Skills for Autism for more help? I'm a mom who could give 100% for my daughter, just struggling to get a good, intensive, structured ABA program. Please help me, she writes. And I'm thrilled that you wrote in because I think that Dr. Grampier has some great information for you.
Okay.
No pressure.
No, not at all. It's just that, like, God bless you for doing so much with such limited resources. I rereading it as you read it. So I think what has happened for this mom is that this program in Melbourne has given her 3 days of training, and then you're on your own, is what I think, because she says I attended the ABA program 3 days through ABA Center in Apple, and then found a supervisor. So I think and I don't even know who your supervisor is, or if they're board certified. Most likely not. A lot of people in New Zealand haven't quite caught up yet. But what I would do in Australia, this is Melbourne. Okay, so what I would do is a couple of different things. First of all, the people I know are not in Melbourne, but what I would do is I would use all the solutions that we have, which I'm going to tell you, Skills and IBT. And then I would definitely hire some family members, neighbors, high school kids, people who just want to help. Because no, I don't think you'll last too long if you're the sole therapist. I'm trying to think. I don't think I could do myself 20 hours a week of therapy with any of my kids. I don't think I would last. It's a lot. So I don't recommend it. I think you need to get other people involved. And what you do is you get a team of people together, and they could be they could be kids, they could be high school kids, and as long as they're serious people and they want to help. And what you do is you will train them. The way to train them, I don't know what training this organization offers, and if you can put them through that might be helpful as well. But our training is on Institute for Behavioral Training, IBT, and the URL for it is ibehavioraltraining.com. ibehavioral, spelled the American way, not the Australian way, .com. And you will, on there, you'll see professional training, teacher training, parent training, and I would suggest that they go through the therapist track. In fact, if they're interested, they could take the board certified autism technician course series. It isn't a lot, it's 40 hours total, and it'll prepare them. And I recommend you do the same. I recommend that you definitely go through the BCAT package, Board Certified Autism Technician package, and that'll teach you more. And if you go to the parent tab or on IBT, there's a lot of very, very useful information there as well. So I think that these modules are very inexpensive, they're short, they're not huge, and we're not talking about a massive amount of, you're in a week you'll get a lot of good training. So after that, and that could be ongoing, by the way, you don't need to do that first. You should do like the basic package first, but then you can continue to increase your knowledge as you treat your child, because you should, and that's going to be very helpful. Then the question becomes, what do you need to teach your child? You don't need a supervisor. The supervisor is the one that basically tells you the following, and I can tell you how to get that information. So if you're paying that supervisor, I'd rather you use that money to pay a therapist or a bunch of therapists. So what you do is you'll need to know exactly what your child's skills and deficits are, and you'll need to know how to improve on those. So that's skills. And yes, you should definitely go on the Skills website, skillsforautism.com, And there you will first answer a bunch of questions about your child. So you sign up and you'll answer a whole bunch of questions. And after you answer all those questions of what your child can and cannot do, all the things that you said your child cannot do will go to kind of a big supermarket of lessons, of areas that need to be worked on. And then it'll give you options by domain, and you'll select and you'll say, okay, I'm going to do why 30 hours? She's 3 years old. If you can get a team of people together, if you can get a bunch of therapists or neighborhood kids or whatever, neighbors or friends or family members to help, I would put together a 40-hour program at least. And I would say, okay, her entire day is going to be packed with therapy. And you would make these sessions go about 2 hours each. So you'll do, let's say, 9 to 11, and then give her a break for half an hour, and then do like 11:30 till 1:30, during which time you can also work on feeding skills, teaching her to eat by herself politely and so on. And then you'll do another little break, and then you'll do another 2-hour session. And realistically, you want to do at least 3 2-hour sessions a day, if you can, or 2, and then go through the weekend as well. You really want to pack about 40 hours if you can into her life. And don't worry about academics right now. I wouldn't. I would use this young age to teach her all the skills she needs other than academics. So I would not be putting my child in school. I would be really just focusing on teaching. Now, if you can't fill her time, then that's when you want to put her in school, because we don't want the children to be unoccupied. You want her to be occupied. And then what you do is you just start selecting from these domains. And essentially, when your child is 3, you're going to be focusing on the domain on the curriculum area of language, on social, play, and adaptive. And depending on how much of her motor deficits are significant, usually our kids don't have a ton of motor deficits. So if you can ignore the motor curriculum, that will save you some time. On the other hand, if you see that your child has some visual issues or some sensory issues, then do look at the motor curriculum, because there's a sensory motor is in there as well. So that's how I would focus my time. And then you just go through and you select, like, let's say, if you're doing 40 hours and you're on 5 areas, I would pick like 3 4 language lessons, maybe 1 social, 1 play, maybe 1 or 2 adaptive. Obviously, she's 3. I don't know if she's potty trained. You need to make sure she gets potty training, toilet training. That's very important. So you put all of that together to make a nice mix. And then what we can actually show you, like if you you can get someone from Skills to call and show you how to set up a lesson plan, like how the lesson plans work and how you write them, and we can show you how to take data. It's actually, there's a module on IBT about data collection and how you can take data with forms and everything. It'll help you get started. Another really good resource is our book that we published a couple of years ago, Evidence-Based Treatments for Autism, the CARD model. I would read that. With all of that together, in other words, instead of spending your time really doing the actual therapy, I would spend the time on teaching yourself a little bit more about ABA and how to design programs, so that you become the program supervisor, the manager of the program, and you tell the therapists what they need to do. If you get to a future point where it's just very difficult to know the next steps, there are other things. We have a telehealth process here at the CARD. You can definitely hire one of our supervisors, and they will get on like FaceTime with you, and they will actually see how you work with the child, with your child. They'll see how the therapists work with the child, will give feedback, will train more, will tell you how to do programming, what lessons to select, how to teach specific skills, how to move on. But Skills will tell you everything you need completely from age 3 all the way up to age 8, and hopefully during the course of 3 or 4 years you're done, like, and your child's mastering things, and then ultimately you mainstream into school, and then the program stops, or it fades out because the child is successful. So it sounds very overwhelming, but it is quite doable. And I would just suggest that you put a lot of your time more into learning rather than actually doing the stuff. Try to, if you can, try to hire other people. Now, if financial is a big problem, then write back and we'll help you trouble solve that and figure out some other solutions.
Yeah, and I just want to say that you wouldn't be the first parent to do this and do this successfully.
Right.
One of the things that we show from time to time here on the show is the story of Maddie, the little girl who was diagnosed with autism, and her parents were living in a rural place where they couldn't get access to anything. And so they were trying to come up with an ABA program on their own. It was right as Skills was coming out. They took the Skills program. They got the people from their church to volunteer their time. They trained all of them and using what is now the IBT training. And they were able to intensively intervene with their daughter, and she needs no additional services now. And other families have done it too. It's just we have video of Maddie, and that's why I bring her up.
Definitely.
And they've been an amazing, outspoken family of saying this is possible.
Right.
I love the fact that years ago there was only one way to do this, right? And it was in the home, and you either had to have a funding source or you had to be independently wealthy.
Right.
And this is when I say every day that Dr. Grant-Bichet is a visionary. This is one of the many things that I'm talking about was that you said, and I was in the room when you once said this isn't okay. We have the tools. We need to make sure that people have access to the tools.
Definitely.
And you made that happen. You took, and people told you not to and said, this is your secret sauce, hide it. And you said, not happening. And made it so that it is possible for everyone to be able to have access.
Right.
Will it be harder? Yes. If you don't have a team of people, and especially I appreciate you saying, because I know we have had some parents that are doing 20 to 30 hours themselves without other support, and they would tell you it's really hard, and that they really don't get as far in terms of generalization because it's just them. You just by virtue of how generalization works, you have to have another person to be doing it with a child for them to really learn it.
Yes.
But we as parents come with baggage every time we come to our child, because we also have to get them up, and we have to get them cleaned, and we have to feed them, and so you have to also be the primary reinforcer. Right.
I mean, let's face it, the role of mom is also to pick the child up when they're hurt, to cuddle, to help them sleep, to hold them when they have a tummy ache. You have to be the calming, soothing mother. So that is a little contrary to being also the person that makes the most demands.
Right.
So it just makes it very hard for parents.
And I think what worked best for me and what works great for so many parents is the idea that we don't abdicate and go, oh no, I don't have anything to do with this. But when your team sets something in motion and you follow through on it, man, that will get you the farthest, I believe. So
absolutely,
think outside the box. Sometimes there are university students who need a job and they want experience. And will work for free or for less. Sometimes we've had a family that had their local Kiwanis organization sponsor the child and learn and donate their time. We've had sororities who said we want to pick a certain child and train all the sororities to be able to do this. So even if you can't afford to hire a therapist, there are people who have found the way around it. I just want to point that out.
Absolutely.
And then write back to us and let us know what happens, okay? All right, we're going to take another break, and then we're going to be back with more questions after these messages.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They'll think, kids are kids, what are they talking about? But when the child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. But it didn't matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeche, and she's answering your questions in real time. That was just the fabulous Brianna Yeedy that we saw. What a little light she is. Okay, I want to move to a question from a grandparent. I just particularly love it when grandparents write in. You know, I love when Suzanne Wright was, I don't remember which talk show, it was probably Larry King that she was on shortly after my son was diagnosed with autism, and she looked at the camera and she said, look, I see firsthand with my daughter that the parents are so overwhelmed with all the things they have to do. As a grandparent, you know, get up off the couch and do something for your family. And I was just doing a parent talk last week, and there was a grandparent that was there who was just so on it. She was there with the mom and the dad, and you know, and she was asking more questions than anybody else. She was like, I want to know about this and I want to know about that. Love it when a grandparent is involved. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
So this grandparent says, my soon-to-be 4-year-old grandson will be moving from Santa Barbara to Newport Beach. He is presently receiving service from, did you say that, Kegel?
Kegel, yeah.
Kegel. Autism Center at UCSB, in-home and preschool, private typical. I think that's private typical in school, but I'm not sure. In school, the aide is with him a portion of the day. He is also receiving outside speech therapy. We are lost in trying to find the right therapy in Orange County. Their preference is to keep him in this school environment with an aide since he is doing well and making progress, and to have at-home therapy. And they are also to group therapy for certain aspects of his treatment. Do you have any recommendations? And thank you. We know a lot of people in Orange County that are doing amazing work.
We have a lot of offices in Orange County. I don't even know how many anymore. I would just recommend that you schedule for an intake. You don't have to, obviously, once you've had the intake, once the family has had the intake evaluation, they don't have to continue with CARD, but I would really recommend that you do an actual intake. Newport Beach. So you would be very close to our San Juan Capistrano office, and I would really recommend that you set up a time. All you have to do is call our number on our website. Actually, if you go on our website, there's a way to get into the admissions process right on the website. So there's what's called a parent portal, and you go in there, put a bunch of information, we call and set up a time for the parents to bring the child in, and we will check on insurance benefits and so on and so forth. Now the Kegels, I'm very familiar with the Kegels. They are good friends of mine, and they do pivotal response, which is a type of ABA, and there are some similarities to sort of the type of ABA that we do at CARD. It won't be anything that'll conflict. And if your child is doing really well, then I'm pretty sure that the supervisor who sees the child in Orange County would say the same thing, which I'm saying, which is, yes, we definitely wanted to keep the child in school with a shadow. And the way that works is that we end up getting school district funding, or the school district just places a shadow with the child in their district, while you also get insurance funding to work on skills at home and at our centers. The centers provide a lot more social environment for the children so they can socialize with other children. And so, yeah, you're on the right track. I think you just need to meet with a professional. Go on our website, centerforautism.com, and look at all the centers we have. Depending on where they live in Newport Beach, I mean, our Irvine Center could be closer, I don't know, but we're all over Orange County. We have so many centers I can't even name. So I would really recommend you start with what we call an intake, which is the first evaluation. And also, as part of being a patient at CARD or as doing an intake at CARD, we'll do a full skills review. So the parents will answer questions on skills and will get a profile, which you can take and use wherever you go. You don't have to be with us, but it's a profile of all the child's skills and deficits as well. So just get in touch and we'll definitely be able to help.
Yeah, I highly recommend that you look at the CARD program.
I mean, Bob Cagle actually went to the same UCLA school program that I did. And Lynn Cagle, who's a speech path, is a good friend, and she does a lot of good work with the kids. And I know that their program is not that much different. So
there you go. Wonderful. So definitely check that out. I wanted to take a question that came in on the live feature, and I want to thank all of you who are watching on Facebook Live. Diana writes in and says, how do I help my child with changes? I have problems lately when we go outside and we have to come back in the house. He gets really upset. I have to carry him home. He's only 2 and nonverbal. I do want to point out that there is an episode of the A Word that deals exactly with this, and he's just a little bit older. He might be just 3 when this happens, and it might be worthwhile to check that out on the A Word, not the British television show, the documentary. We've got a playlist for it on our YouTube channel, but perhaps
cool, that's great. So, there's a lot of different things you can do in this circumstance. You have to ask yourself why this is. Sometimes parents will say, oh, he has issues with transitions. It's not really issues with transitions. It's simply transitioning from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. Most of the time, that's what the case is. And so it's a very, very natural process for kids to have a hard time. And, if your child did not have a diagnosis, and they had a tantrum outside and would refuse to come inside, you'd probably pick the child up and bring him in and then get him engaged in something else. And you're going to do pretty much the same thing here. Essentially, the idea is the child's, by tantruming or by, showing that he's upset, all he's doing is he's non-vocally expressing to you, I don't want to go in, I really want to stay outside and play longer. And I think there's several things you could do. One is you can help the child. I mean, he's 2 years old. This might not help because he's so young, but sometimes it helps. You could try it. With some of our kids, what we do is we'll set a timer. We'll tell them when the timer is finished, we're going in. So it kind of, for kids who have a hard time with transitions, that gives them a head start. For kids who really don't have issues with transitions but would prefer to stay in the more fun activity, this doesn't help. It actually makes it worse because now then the child gets all nervous that they're about to give up their playtime. So realistically, the best way to fix this is just to make sure the environment inside provides some reinforcer so that the child is more willing to come inside and get the reinforcer. So what you do is you say it's time to go in. Don't even worry about tantrum or whatever it is. Literally pick your child up, go inside. When you're inside, give the child some sort of significant reinforcer, a lollipop, a snack, something that he gets the minute he comes inside. We're not talking comes inside and walks to the kitchen. We're talking the minute he's inside the door. So, and then let's say you give him a lollipop. As he's opening the lollipop, you distract him with some other activity and we're good and he'll move on. 2-year-olds, it's very, very easy to distract them and to keep things moving along. Do not wait for him to set the tone of the time frame. Don't wait for him to start freaking out. Just usher him along, like give him a little thing, get him busy with the next thing and the next thing, and before you know it, it's over. That's all it is. It's just a preference for being outside, I think. And if that doesn't apply, let me know what I'm missing because I don't have all the facts here.
Yeah, I always say to parents who are new to the whole ABA thing about, imagine if you didn't have the words to convey or people weren't listening to you or you didn't know. And I'm sure you've heard the story before. It's Art Wilkie's favorite story about me. Just like 4 years ago, I was in a shoe store with my husband and my son, and I have a very low frustration threshold. I'm not very good at being frustrated for long periods of time. I will do anything to not be frustrated. And I was trying to get them to listen to me, and they were so tuned out. And, you know, Jem was playing with a shoehorn, and my husband was over looking at a pair, and I was like, guys, you know, I got to be someplace, and we got to, you know, can you help me, honey? Jem, come over. Nobody wanted to hear from me. So I just laid down on the floor in the middle of the store.
No
I
way.
just laid down in the middle of the floor, and my husband was like, what's going on? I was like, nobody's listening to me, so I'm not doing anything anymore. I just threw a hissy fit.
That's
and
hilarious.
and Art Wilkie loves this story. And I just laid, and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm on strike. And my husband was like, get up off the floor. You're embarrassing me. You're like, you don't. And it's funny, every time we go into that store now, because buying shoes is a really, you know, there's a lot of work involved in, you know, moving parts and stuff. We go into that store, and I go, how are we going to do today? And everybody's like, oh, it's going to be fine. Years later,
Oh
my
my
husband's
God,
like,
that's so
just promise
funny.
me you're not going to lay on the floor. You know,
That's so
but
funny.
I just was like, no, nobody's listening to me, so I'm going to make sure you listen to me.
Yes.
And I think, you know, 2-year-olds are particularly good at that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very typical thing. How else am I going to express to you that I don't want to go in?
You're not listening to the other ways I tried.
Right.
I'll try new ways.
And you know, it's actually, instead of like, you know, you always want to analyze what circumstances leads to the child throwing a tantrum. Like in my mind, if your 2-year-old has a significant preference for the outside versus the inside right now, what it tells me is that this is a child who might be a little bit on the hyperactive side, and they enjoy the ability to run around and be active outside as opposed to inside. That's the more important factor.
Yeah.
That's the thing you should think about, because now you want to make sure that during the course of your child's day, there's adequate physical activity to tire him out, and then there's adequate time to, you know, so that he can sit down and focus on things. Those are the types of things. Otherwise, don't worry about the fact that he doesn't want to come in. Which 2-year-old wants to actually go inside, you know?
Right. It's fun. Outside is more fun. Somebody wrote into us and said, hi, I was curious and how I could work there. I'm very interested in working with children with autism, and I have heard great things about this company. I'm
That's
sure you
great.
have, because there's
That's
lots of great
wonderful.
things to say.
Yeah, so I think on our website there's also an employment page, and you could just get on there, and there's contact information. Otherwise, just call our 800 number and ask to go to the recruiters, and recruiting will take you in. We're hiring, I think, 70 new therapists a week,
There you go.
which is crazy.
And what a
across the
great
country.
career. What a great
Oh,
way
yeah,
to make a
absolutely.
difference.
It's very nice. I mean, you come in as a therapist, we train you right off the bat for either a registered behavior technician or a board certified autism technician, one or the other. And those are both awesome. And you start with getting a certificate. And then once you have the certificate, now your behavior therapist level, BT level, increases. So you will immediately get an increase in wages as well, because now you're like a BT2. And then if you become an expert in one area, which will teach you these things over the course of all the continuing ed you do here, you become like a BT3 or BT4. And ultimately, if you become a liaison, or a trainer, people who train other people, you're 4 or 5. And then during the course of that period of time, you're getting increases all the time. And also you are now learning more and more, so many people then become interested in actually developing a professional career in this field. And then they go on, let's say if you start with high school, when you finish high school and come here, over the first 4 years, we are helping you move up BT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And and we adjust your schedule according to your school schedule. There's a lot of flexibility here. And if you do well, then of course after you get your bachelor's, you have the ability to go and get what's called a board certified associate behavior analyst, BCABA credential. And that then allows you to become an assistant or an associate supervisor here at CARD, which then gives you a ton more growth in your career. And then beyond that, even further, you can become a supervisor and get your master's. We actually help with a lot of people's education. We support education, so we pay for the degrees and credentials that our individuals get. And so, yeah, we'd love to have you.
We only have a minute left, and as much as I would love to throw a question at you and keep you 5 minutes over, I know I really can't today, that you got a house full of people that you really have to get back to.
Yes.
But I want to take this opportunity to thank you. I know in particular there was somebody who wrote in with a phone number. I'm going to call you after the show, so know that. Got your message. And for everybody else who wrote in questions, I apologize that we can't get to all of them, but I really want to thank you for all that you do and for being here.
Thank you.
When next we meet you, next week we're going to be in April.
I know, my
it's
God.
Amazing April Awareness, Action, and Acceptance Month. Whichever one you happen to celebrate or commemorate, because I know for different people, April is different things.
Absolutely.
And I participate in all three of those things, and whatever you're going to participate in, I hope you'll be here with Dr. Grant Pichet as we move forward into April.
Hey guys, welcome back to Smarty. Today we're going to be making homemade glow-in-the-dark bouncy balls. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are 2 mixing bowls, something to stir with, measuring spoons, borax, cornstarch, water, glue, and glow paint and food coloring. So step 1, you're going to take one of your measuring bowls and you're going to measure out half a teaspoon of borax, 4 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 4 tablespoons of water. Then you're going to mix that all together. I'm going to set this aside. In another bowl, I'm going to mix my glue and my glow-in-the-dark paint and any food coloring I want to use to make it a special color. I have 2 separate bowls with the mixtures in them. Now I'm going to put them together, letting them sit for the next 15 seconds, and then I'll stir them together. It's important that you let them sit for a moment before stirring so they can do their magical thing. Now that the 15 seconds is over, I'm going to stir together the mixture, making sure to stir thoroughly until I can no longer do it anymore. You'll see what I mean in a second. Now that I can no longer stir it, I'm going to start rolling around in my hands to make a ball. And voila, very own homemade bouncy ball. Woo! Well, I hope you had fun with this activity today. Until next time, drop down, guys.
And you see me flying by your side.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod. Good morning.
Hi, good
and welcome.
morning to you.
We got a lot to do this morning.
Yeah, we have a couple of
Feels like
guests.
there's a lot going on
Yeah.
too. Just a lot happening. But we've got some in the news. A little bit later on, we're going to have 2 amazing guests. Carrie Dunn-Barone is going to be with us. And then we have Tara Leniston, and both of them are authors and co-authors. We've got stacks of books on our tables that we're going to be going over with you guys. Coming Home to Autism, a room-by-room approach to supporting your child at home after ASD diagnosis. That's the Tara Leniston and Rhianne Grounds. And then Cara Dunn-Barone sent us 2 books. I love, I've seen you use this before.
Yes, the incredible 5-point scale, which we do use in our home for showing different levels of emotion.
And then the When My Worries Get Too Big book.
It's for children who live with anxiety.
Yeah,
so.
well, but really.
Don't we all?
I'm like, for children, I can hear parents are like, wait a minute, what's the name of that book again? When My Worries Get Too Big.
That's relatable.
I mean, come on, that's all of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they're both going to be with us a little bit later on in the show in separate interviews. But before that, we have some in the news. And I swear to goodness, it was like a salad grinder in here. I mixed everything up. So what do you want to start with, Miss Nancy?
Well, there's a very odd story about out of England, out of the Sun newspaper,
yes.
I believe. that up to 150 autistic children could have been given sex change drugs on NHS despite not being transgender.
Yeah, this is a little, and again, it's being reported in the Sun. We don't know the veracity of this, and it's a little controversial, but apparently there are groups that are disputing here, but there are a lot of children now that are identifying themselves as transgender in the world. And there are medicines that are given to them to stop puberty.
Right.
Because what they're seeing is if someone is transgender, that in their mind and their body is not the right sex for how they identify in their mind, if they go through puberty, the things that they're going to have to go through, the surgeries they're going to have to go through are so much more extensive. And there are some things you can't reverse.
Right.
Like if there is a boy that feels that inside that he is a girl and he grows an Adam's apple, you can't reverse that.
Right.
So there, and it's very controversial. A lot of people on both sides thinking whether this is appropriate or not, because this is asking a young kid. But adults who have been through this have said, believe me, I knew when I was 4, I was 5. But apparently it's being reported that these individuals who are on the spectrum are saying that they think that they're another sex, and they're going ahead and giving them the drug.
Right.
And the concern is, does a person on the spectrum
really know?
Are they able to identify?
Exactly.
Because what happens if they get to adulthood and go, oopsie, that isn't really... and if you think about it, that's a much deeper question. And I don't know how I feel about just the hypothetical of this, because to automatically assume that because a person has autism that they can't, and believe me, there are people on the autism spectrum that are transgender, right? And to assume that they don't know what's happening to themselves just because they have autism is very scary, right? I don't know that I like that, but to chemically alter someone, I mean, it's a very dicey thing.
Yes.
Either way you look at it.
It says 1/3 of those referred to London's Tavistock Clinic have strong signs of autism. The Mail on Sunday reports the drugs, which stop the body maturing, are seen by many experts as the first step to changing sex. Now, I don't know why all of these children with signs of autism ended up at this clinic.
Well, they were referred, and I think the question is here, you know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, have they been identified as being on the autism spectrum? You know, have they had, you know, has somebody looked at it from that perspective and said, you know, here's what's happening with the autism? You know, the Sun did this report, but it's not very extensive.
No.
But it certainly raises some more questions. And again, we're just reporting what they wrote in the Sun.
Right.
But it's a very interesting dilemma, and certainly a lot of people from the transgender community are up in arms about it, saying you can't just legislate that they can't get these drugs.
Right.
Well, I will look forward to hearing from some of the families, because it would seem that the parents are saying okay to this.
Yeah.
So, very, very interesting. Okay.
Then there's a study out of the University of Utah about a researcher that went straight to the kids to see what they wanted their future to look like as adults.
Yeah.
So she interviewed 27 students, University of Utah assistant professor Ann Kirby, and so it's research, she said, is about people on the autism spectrum, but it's not with them. So it's not talking to them, it's not hearing their own voices and ideas. And so she went directly to the kids who expressed some of their concerns and worries.
And it's very interesting what they have to say about it. And there's this huge movement right now that we've reported here. Of course, there's the nothing about us without us, but making sure that that extends to research is a very important topic that I think we all need to embrace. And even though I would hope that for all of us as parents that we're at some point talking to our kids about, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up and what are you afraid when you grow up, let's be honest that if our kids have the ability to communicate when they get to be a certain age, they're not necessarily going to run to us. I don't know about you, but that's devastating to me, to think I want to be the person that my son feels comfortable coming and talking to, but that isn't always the case. And I think that's true across the board, with autism, without autism, and how wonderful that she set up this circumstance, which opens a dialogue for all of us, asking these teenagers what they were worried about.
What their dreams and fears are.
Yeah. Really amazing story. And of course, you guys can check that out. It's, again, University of Utah. Fascinating. And then the last one's a feel-good one. I love this. You know, when we're trying to teach people things, it's important. We talk about this in ABA all the time, that you have to use things that are reinforcing.
Right.
So there's a mom who got very savvy to the fact that her son is really into pop icons. And Sarah Jane Cox said that she built her entire homeschool curriculum for her son around those musical idols. I love this quote that she said, if you were to say, we've got 4 oranges and 6 oranges, how many have we got, that her son wouldn't have a clue. But instead, if she said to him, Madonna's on stage, she's got several dancers to the side and several dancers to the other side of him. Now, how many dancers do we have that he can come up with the answer?
He'd be able to do it, right.
But I mean, how powerful is that, knowing what's reinforcing for your kids?
Taking your child's strengths and teaching them that way. So it might be a good clue to teaching other kids as well.
Yes. I mean, eventually you've got to be able to transfer that to things that they don't want to. But in the world of autism, they talk about high P. High P is a highly preferred thing. And when the highly preferred thing is being offered, or when it's involved in the thing, you're more likely to get more success. So we talk here on the show, we rarely talk about high P because it's just one of those terms that only, you know, clinicians use. But we talk about doing a preference assessment. And it doesn't matter the ability of the individual or the age. You can do a preference assessment with anyone to see what it is that they want. You can do it with a very little baby that is nonverbal. But knowing what somebody wants and that they're into is like the key to get the learning jump started. So I love the fact that this mom did this. Really, really amazing. The title is Taylor Swift, Autism, How Taylor Swift Helps Fletcher 8 Learn. I'm sure she loves seeing that today too. Okay, so we got these 2 amazing gifts, and we sort of teased what the books are.
Yes.
And I think we're having Carrie first.
Right.
Are we not?
So we'll find out about When My Worries Get Too Big and the Incredible 5-Point Scale.
I'm ready for that.
We'll be back
Stick
soon.
with us.
I am Alexis Weinman at the Future Horizons Super Conference in Dallas, Texas. It helped me in a way because it was a format that I was not used to. Like, I had never curled my hair before. I've never worn heels. I didn't know what foundation was. And it was just, it was a very, like, it helped me more in a business sense. Like, I know how to present myself in front of people now. That's something my mom drilled into my head. I have trouble sometimes with it. Like, you introduced yourself to me downstairs, and so I immediately, like, and I've heard of you before, so I was like, I know this person, I can make eye contact with this person. And if I'm talking to someone I don't know, or if I'm listening to someone give a speech, most of the time my head will be down. I don't look at people in the eye, but if it's someone I know I need to make eye contact with, I make eye contact. But my mom growing up, she, especially after the diagnosis, she would always like grab my hand if I was like, you know, looking everywhere else but her, and she'd like say, look me in the eye. And so she wouldn't let go of my hand until I looked her in the eye. I do feel like I have to do play poet because, you know, sometimes there'll be jokes I don't understand, but I'll laugh at anyway. There will be situations that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to have to play along anyway. And I think I just found out, like, I'm just a tremendously amazing liar. Like, I can pretend like I'm uncomfortable with something when in actuality I am screaming inside, or I know the moment I get back to my dorm room I'm going to start screaming or having a meltdown or something like that. But I also know that there is a time and a place because there isn't any safe rooms available in neurotypical society. Like, we have to make our own. And, you know, on a college campus, there's not many places you can go and scream without attracting attention. The way I explain it to people is you know, people's brains like hamster wheels. Eventually the hamster's got to take a break. Autistic brains aren't like that. They just keep going and going and going. So we can't stop thinking about things. That's why a lot of kids with autism have sleep problems, because they can't fall asleep because they have too much on their brain. They can't sleep because they're thinking too much. And I think just the walking in circles, there's no thought to a circle. Like, it's just, like, so I'll just plug in my earphones so I can't hear anything else except whatever white noise I'm listening to, and I'll just walk in a circle. I think it's just like we are just as prevalent as men with autism. There might not be as many as there are boys, but we are still part of this movement. We're still part of this community, and we just got to remind people that, hey, you know, we're here too. You know, don't forget about us. One thing I've learned is that, first off, I'm not the only person who is speaking from their own perspective. Like, I feel like I go to some of these conferences and it's a bunch of doctors and a bunch of parents who want to talk and get to know what autism is about, but there's not a lot of people on the spectrum talking about it. And so I come to these and I see Temple Grandin, who's one of the biggest faces in the autism community, actually get up and talk about what helped her and what we need to do in order to get our kids out of society and not in our parents' basements. And so it just kind of reaffirmed me, like, I'm not the only one. Thank you. Because I'd go to these and I would be the only one. I'd be next to a bunch of doctors and talking about words I have not even seen before, let alone pronounce. And I'm just sitting here like, I did a pageant once. So it's good to know, like, I'm speaking from a perspective of not necessarily overcoming, but learning to live with this, because I feel like not a lot of people come out and say what it's like to live on the autism spectrum. A lot of people talk about the struggles and everything like that, but they don't talk about, you know, what they've done to make their lives better while living on the spectrum.
And we're back with Let's Talk Autism, and now we're joined by Carrie Dunn. Is it Buran?
Buran. Mm-hmm.
Buran, okay. Buran. And Carrie Dunn Buran has taught kindergarten through 12 with students on the autism spectrum for 30 plus years, was a founding member of the Minnesota Autism Project. She has developed an autism spectrum disorder certificate program for educators at Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. Her accomplishments go on, but she's here today as the co-author of the 5-point scale, the incredible 5-point scale, and the author of When My Worries Get Too Big, which is designed for kids. So we're going to be talking to her about both of those books. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you very much.
It's thrilled to have you here. So the incredible 5-point scale, which I'm just going to point out, most of the rim of it is green, you guys. That's why it's see-through, because we shoot on a green screen. But so it's a system that you developed with your colleague, Bitsy Curtis. Can you tell us what ideas and research contributed to the development of the 5-point scale?
Yes, certainly. The idea is that we were looking at the traditional or the most common autism learning styles, such as using visuals to learn, that being a learning strength, whereas a lot of auditory input and language concepts seem to be less of a strength. And Simon Baron-Cohen from Cambridge University developed a learning theory that he called hypersystemizing and hypo-emotionalizing. And by that he meant that most individuals on the autism spectrum seem to learn best through systems and had more difficulty learning through emotional language. So what we started doing was taking social and emotional concepts that we were trying to teach and put them on a scale. So everything got broken into 5 parts, whether it was voice volume or stress, personal distance, language, swearing, that kind of thing. So no matter what it was, we could just take that concept, that idea, and break it into 5 parts. So we're teaching social and emotional concepts and ideas to people who otherwise have difficulty grasping them or understanding. Yeah, so that was it. And we started with the voice scale, trying to teach a middle school boy that in the hallway while passing, you needed to use number 3 voice. Rather than telling him he was too loud or he needed to talk softer, those felt very judging to him, and he responded poorly to those prompts. So instead, we found that if we reviewed a voice volume scale prior to going out to passing in the hallway, and he clearly understood that the hallway was a number 3, then all we had to do was either hold up a number 3 or prompt him that he needed to bring it down to a 3.
And when you realized how well this worked, you had to have been really excited.
Oh, yes. In the first edition of the book, I wrote that we started thinking that every problem in the world could be solved via a 5-point scale. So in the beginning, it was overwhelming. It worked so well and so fast. We started making scales for the teachers that we were working with at the time, and for other school districts. And so we finally decided to write a book about it. We could hand them something.
Okay. Tell us how the 5-point scale differs from behavior management tools.
Traditional behavior management tools usually look at what to do and what not to do. And this is really more of, and actually happened after the fact in most cases. So you earn a jelly bean, or you lose a jelly bean, or you earn a token, or a smiley face. So even positive behavior management, positive reinforcement is really different. This is a cognitive behavioral approach to teaching, and it is all about teaching social and emotional concepts in a very direct and highly systematic way. If somebody has explosive behavior, has problems with their emotional regulation, and with a minor disappointment completely falls apart, in a traditional behavioral system, I might try to use some sort of motivation to get this person to control those emotions. The 5-point scale really looks at the idea that skills can be taught, and that something like emotional regulation is a skill. And that's been pretty well documented in recent cognitive neuroscience. So emotional regulation as a skill can be taught. So you take a skill like voice volume, a simple skill like that, and rather than give the boy in the hallway a token for using the right voice volume in the hallway, I'm focusing my attention on teaching him how to recognize his own voice volume and adjusting based on the number scale of the environment, if that makes sense.
Right. And this can also be used in the home. There's an example in the book, The Incredible Home Scale. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the Incredible Home Scale was a scale written for a young girl who oftentimes lost emotional control when they were visiting her grandparents or family members or friends. And so the recommendation was to try to teach her through the use of the 5-point scale. And the 1 in this case was, I can handle this. I'm fine. So if that's how she's feeling, she would be at a number 1. I'm feeling a little bit nervous. That was a number 2. Please don't talk to me. That was a number 3. I need some space, and that was number 4. and I need to leave, and that was number 5. So in working with mom on using this scale with her daughter, we talked about the importance of validating her daughter's ratings. So even if mom was having the best time ever, if her daughter rated herself at a 4, she needed to wrap it up and assume that she was pushing her daughter beyond her daughter's ability to control her emotions, and she was going to lose control if they didn't leave. And it worked really, really well. Her daughter ended up being able to check in with her mom, and they would check in throughout the visit. So if they were there for Thanksgiving dinner, or if they were there for some other social reason, she would have her daughter check in with her on an hourly basis, so that she could say, okay, where are you? What number are you at right now? So that she could proactively kind of intervene and make a good decision before her daughter lost control.
It's really amazing. And what I love about it is that once you teach this 5-point to an individual, then you can apply it to so many other things, and you don't have to reteach the concept. They get it at that point. Let's talk a little bit now about the when my worries get too big, and what your hopes are for this book in the hands of teachers and parents.
Okay. That is taking the scale. The book is taking the scale and putting it into story form and language that would be appropriate for children. It was actually written for a boy named Nicholas when he was 5 years old. Nicholas is now an adult. But when he was 5 years old, he was pretty close to school phobia. He had such high levels of anxiety. And we were working on relaxation. I was working with an occupational therapist on relaxation. And we were working on the 5-point scale the anxiety scale. I think I might have given you one of those as well, where it's just 1 is I can handle this, and a 5 is I'm going to fall apart.
We have a picture of that, yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay,
It's up on the screen right now.
Okay, we were working on that scale, but he was only 5 years old, and he loved to write stories as just an activity that we would do with him. So what I decided to do was write a story about the 5-point scale and anxiety. And at that time, there was a program, a cognitive behavioral program, I think it was out of Yale. The author's name was John Marsh. And it was called How I Ran OCD Off My Land. And the whole idea was he was taking OCD and putting it into part and parcel of this person. So it wasn't that this OCD was this separate piece. It was a part of this person's personality and who he was. And it was written for children. And yet sometimes that OCD got just in the way, and he had to run it off his land. He had to work really hard to overcome. So I started thinking about that and put anxiety into that equation, and using the same kind of cognitive behavioral approach, helping Nicholas understand that the autism or the worries were that was part of who he was, and that wasn't a bad thing. And with it came some pretty amazing strengths. But every now and then those worries would just get too big for him to manage. And that's what he needed to fight back. And he learned what we called a calming sequence. And a calming sequence was just a series of actions. I think his was rub head, rub legs, squeeze hands. It's for every child it can be a little bit different because whatever is calming to them, whatever movement.
Yes, I think for him you have taking deep breaths, putting his hands together and pressing his hands together. I'm looking at the book now.
Yeah. Okay, so he We gave him that sequence, and the
Right.
sequence is really based on the research in the area of autism, or not autism, excuse me, anxiety, which shows that when somebody is highly anxious, their brain really does prefer a very predictable, overlearned sort of sequence. And you can think about this as, for instance, training to be a firefighter. They repeat the same things, or a police officer, a first responder of any kind, because it's highly stressful. They practice all the different possibilities and what the response could be, to lessen the idea that they even have to think when they approach that level of stress, that the brain really doesn't do well when it's highly anxious. So the idea is that when Nicholas was beginning to feel anxious, he could close his eyes, take a deep breath, rub his legs, squeeze his hands, take another deep breath, and open his eyes. And we would practice that over and over and over and over again, so that it became second nature, kind of like a gymnast's routine. You know, a gymnast doesn't do this skill, this skill, this skill. It really has to be practiced so many times that it becomes a fluid motion. And for this situation, it really was, we were going for the same idea, that I wanted Nicholas to overlearn this relaxation sequence, so that when he was faced with anything that might be disturbing, he could close his eyes, take a deep breath, rub his legs, squeeze his hands, take another deep breath, and open his eyes. So it was allowing him to learn this sort of a trick for him to use to lower his anxiety, to lower his body's anxiety. But first he needed to learn to identify the different feelings in his body. And so we used the scale to sort of look at, what does a 1 feel like? You know, when you're really happy, how does that feel? When you're getting a little nervous, how does that feel? And when you've lost control, what does that feel like? And what kinds of things make you feel this way? And every child is a little bit different. So the book is really, it's left open for kids to list the things that make them feel really good, and the things that make them really upset. The story itself, it uses a lot of simple emotion words to help children understand the language of emotion, which is another way of learning how to regulate your emotions. You're looking at emotional regulation, and teaching the skill of emotional regulation, teaching the language involved with understanding emotion is a first step. So after the book has been read, then reading the book repetitively over time is a really good idea. And then if there are any predictably nerve-wracking things that your child faces, whether it's going to church or the grocery store, or to a family member's Thanksgiving dinner, you would then read the story before going, and maybe make a little 5-point scale, little business card size 5-point scale to take with him, put in his pocket. Look at it when he's starting to feel anxious, to remind him of the story.
This is just so lovely. There's an example, though, that you use when talking to people about this whole idea of taking your emotions, accepting that they're a part of you, but not getting overwhelmed by them, that has to do with Harry Potter. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's genius, a way to explain it to kids.
And I said this?
Yes, it's the whole thing about having a pestilence, isn't it? The Dumbledore has the thing where.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Dumbledore, had kept all his memories, and of course he lived for hundreds of years. So sometimes the stress of having so many memories got to him, and he would have to empty his memories into now, because you've asked me, I'm going to forget the name of it.
It's like a pestilence. It's something.
A pensive?
A pensive. That's what it is.
Thank you. So the pensive is this big vat, and that's where he empties all of his memories. And we oftentimes would have a worry box at school or at camp. I used to run a camp for kids as well, and the idea would be to either write it down or even just think about it and put the card into the worry box. That actually, one of my campers found an app on his iPad that's a shredder. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but you can type in a word, for instance, homework, and then you can drag the homework over to the shredder, and the little machine shreds the word.
I love it.
It's along the same lines, though, the visual of sort of getting rid of your worries by funneling them into the pensive.
I love using the example from Harry Potter because I do think kids will get it. Saying take your troubles and put them aside, that's very like, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
But that they have a visual of Dumbledore being able to put his troubles in that, I think that's a really exciting thing. So we're almost out of time here, but where can we get these and where can teachers get these books?
They're available on the Autism Asperger Publishing Company's website. Do you have that?
Yes, Samantha's got up a place where
the
they can get it.
5pointscale.com.
That one, that's my website.
Okay.
And I don't handle any of the merchandise, so but you can click on a book on my website and it'll take you to the publisher's website. So that'll work.
And I've got the publisher's website right here, www.aapcpublishing.net. pcpublishing.net. And really, honestly, as we get ready to go back to school, for those of you who want to give a gift to your teacher as they're starting the school year, get both of these. Be going through the When My Worries Get Too Big with your child leading up to school, but get the other one and give it to your teacher as a gift.
Because these are great. A lot of our kids have anxiety about going back to school. So
yes. Or will just have anxiety. As somebody who has anxiety and has had to go through cognitive behavioral therapy, I think that these are really amazing and so useful. So thank you for all the work that you guys have done and all the help it's providing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
All right.
You take care. Bye-bye.
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 Wonderful.
Okay. I know. I can use this book for myself. I mean,
we all could.
Right.
I mean, honestly, if you have a friend, there's always a workbook that was given to me first when I went to cognitive behavioral therapy that I recommend and have bought some and given them to friends from time to time. But it's like, I always tell them, don't bother reading everything, just do some of the exercises in it. And even that is anxiety causing.
Right.
This is better.
It's simple.
Simple.
It may be designed for children, but it can be helpful to all of us.
And this really does the same thing. It's all about understanding that the process that your body is going through is okay. And that what you say to yourself, first you have to acknowledge where you are, and then what you say to yourself is really what's key.
Right.
And that there are things that you can do to calm yourself down. Yeah, that's all in here.
It's all in here.
So there you go.
Book for the kids.
Fabulous.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a break.
Yeah, we're coming back with Tara Liniston, who wrote the book Coming Home to Autism, co-wrote the book. And we're going to find out a little bit about that book, which has some great tips about autism, just for all parents and for things within your home that you can do.
Setting up your house to work with you, not against you.
Yes, right.
Oh, well.
So we'll be back soon.
That's a good thing. Stick with us.
Hi, this is Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts, frequently asked questions and answers for the autism journey. Now this one is specifically for teens and adults with autism. I get this question all the time. What's new and exciting in the medical world today for teens and adults with autism? So let's talk about them. TMS, transmagnetic stimulation therapy, is something that is really exciting. I met with the author John Robison. Look me in the eye. He's a gentleman with Asperger's, and something I hope all of our kids to strive and grow up and be just like him. He's amazing. He talked about TMS therapy and how he became more social aware. His smile was more natural, and I definitely can better understand things around him in those social settings. Another really great treatment that we're seeing just a ton of research on in the last 3 years is cerebral folate autoimmunity. You know, in the 90s, they started putting folate in all of our different foods and products. Well, some people, they have found out, and specifically a high percentage of children with autism don't process folate like how they should. Go figure. They don't do it the way the books say it's going to happen. So cerebral folate autoimmunity is just a really exciting new therapeutic to work with your physician on and to look to see if your child is a candidate for that therapy. And another common thing that we're seeing in teens and adults, and we've talked about it before in Talk of Facts, is seizures. Very serious issue that needs to be looked at. Abnormal brain waves or brain patterns or epileptic activity in the brain definitely needs to be addressed in children with autism. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I know doctors that can go through and work and look at the child and perform a 24-hour EEG. What they're finding with some of these anticonvulsant or seizure medications is kids start to make great gains in speech, cognition, sleep, learning, by treating any type of seizure activity. So, and the other issue is pandas, not the cute fuzzy bears that we see in the zoo, but an issue that is happening with a lot of teens and adults on the spectrum, where you see a dramatic change in behaviors with these individuals, and often they have an inappropriate immune response. TACA has a great white paper, so you can go look up in the pandas definition what to test and treat for and talk to your doctor about. But know that if you see an extreme swing in behavior with a child that goes from one place to a very negative place, we're seeing a lot of teens positively responding to treatments for pandas. And the last treatment I wanted to talk about, and I'm super excited about, and this happens to not just work with younger kids on the autism spectrum, but also older children on the spectrum, teens and adults. It's called mendability. And a great study just came out of UCI in May 2013 about a multi-sensory approach for individuals with autism. The whole premise behind the therapy is very simple, making it a sensory-rich environment so neural connections can make new pathways or at least connect in that individual. So kids with sensory issues, auditory listening issues, speech issues, they seem to really just respond to mendability, and I was so excited to see that new research. More research is being done on it, and the beautiful part about mendability is it's something parents can do on their own, administer with their child, and be connected to their kid as partners in the autism journey. Don't forget in any therapy or medical intervention to work with your physician and to do proper testing to know what your child needs and what treatments to pursue under a physician's care. So there's so many new things. I could go on for hours about new treatments and excitement, but there's the top ones that just have me so geeked here. But that's another Talk of Fact. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time and on Real Journey, Real Questions and Answers to help your autism journey.
Welcome back. We have our next guest. So excited to have her join us via Skype. Tara Lenniston is joining us. She may look familiar to you because she was an actress and performed in films and on television. She's originally from Ireland, but has lived all over the world. In fact, did a lot of acting through the Jackie Chan agency out of Hong Kong. But when she had her child, and it was one of her children was diagnosed on the spectrum, things kind of took a left turn for her, like it does for so many of us. And together with Rianne Grounds, who is a speech therapist, with extensive background with autism. They have written a book, Coming Home to Autism. The subtitle is A Room-by-Room Approach to Supporting Your Child at Home After ASD Diagnosis. Both of these women are huge advocates for families and individuals on the autism spectrum, trying to help them to reach their fullest potential and to be successful in the home and in all kinds of places.
Right.
This is a really exciting book put together in a very different way, which we're going to talk to her about. So Tara, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Excited
Very
to
good. How are
have you
you?
here.
What inspired you to write the book, Tara?
Dylan, my son.
Okay.
He inspired me mostly. But when Dylan first got diagnosed, I wanted to research everything I could and try and find as much information as I could about him. And all the books I seemed to read were either really medically speaking, and it took me a year to read them, or they were someone else's journey. And like you both know, you have children on the spectrum, everyone's journey is different. You can talk to 10 different people, 100 people, and everyone's journey is different. So that didn't help me. So what I wanted was a book like myself and Rian wrote, which was, you know, very easy to read, and you don't have to read the whole book to get the answer that you want. So if you want to know about how to potty train your child who's on the spectrum, you go to the bathroom section, or to sleep through the night, you go to the bedroom section. So you don't have to, you know, read the whole book to get the answer that you want.
Right.
And so often people, you know, will put together, we see all the time on the show, moms will write a history of what happened to them and their child, right? A memoir. Other times people will do, you know, books about how to teach individual things. But this is the first time that I ever recall somebody taking and giving a really useful tip book, but taking it room by room and thinking of it in that way. What I want to know is, how did that come about? What made you guys realize, you know, that's the way it's structured in our head, so that's the way we're going to write it in the book?
I'm not sure really. I kind of had the book in my head 4 years before I actually wrote it. And I think, you know, home is a really important place for everyone, and it's our safe haven from the world. And what I found is that when I would go to meetings of autism mums, and I would go to, you know, play groups, and I'd talk to speech therapists, I always felt really encouraged. But then I would come home and Dylan would have a meltdown, or he wasn't sleeping through the night, and I felt very alone in that time. And myself and my husband, we had, you know, we separated for a year, and we found it very difficult. We were arguing, and I just felt that home wasn't the safe haven that I wanted. So I spent a long time trying to find, you know, the right textures for Dylan, the right smells for Dylan in the house, to make a safe haven, to make our home a safe haven, as opposed to being outside, being easy, and coming home and it being disastrous.
Right. So you take a lot of your personal experiences, like the fact that Dylan wasn't sleeping through the night, and then you apply that with some practical information, such as giving routines for parents of how they can deal with that problem.
Yes. Yeah, no, routine is just, it's the key for everything. You know, it's what makes our home safe and comfortable, because Dylan feels in control of this environment. He doesn't control us as such, but he knows that breakfast is at the same time, bedtime is the same time every night. We developed this bedtime routine that worked for us. You know, his happy spray, which gets rid of all those bad thoughts, anxiety, which is basically just like a pillow spray. But for him, it works.
Okay.
And how, now that you're sharing these wonderful tips, and they are wonderful tips, talk to us a little bit about, as you did these things, how it changed your relationship with your husband, and how the house ran differently as a result of these changes.
Well, in the beginning, our house was just, you know, it wasn't a nice place to be, because we were arguing, we were sleep deprived, we didn't understand what we were doing with Dylan, and we just spent a long time, you know, talking, getting to know each other again, listening to each other again. And like I said, I spent many years trying to find the best, you know, possible sensory environment for Dylan. So our house is, you know, sensory haven for him. We have a little playroom, which I talk about in the book as well, which could be like a little tent with his sensory toys in it. And that helped him. And soon things started to calm down, and Dylan started to calm down, and home is his safe haven now. And, you know, if you came and sat and had tea with me, you probably wouldn't even know Dylan was on the spectrum, because he's so comfortable in his environment, and he's learned to control his environment, that his behavior settles down a lot.
What are some easy tips? We want people to get the book. I mean, because the book is a treasure trove of fabulous tips and hints of things to be able to do. But give us like one or two of your top tips that you think could help parents in their home today.
Routine, having a routine for your child is probably the most important thing you can do. Visuals, having a visual timetable so they know what's happening in the day. So the night before, I'll run through, a step-by-step guide for Dylan, and it can change. And now he's older, I'll say to him, "Oh, Dylan, number 5 on the list? That's changed because we've got a flat tire." And I have a little whiteboard that I carry in my bag with me, with a pen, and we just change the 1 to 10 of the day. So routine, visuals, they're really my top tips for helping a child on the spectrum and helping your life in general.
I love it. And how old is Dylan now?
He's 8.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And sounds like he's doing really well.
He is doing really well. When he got diagnosed with severe autism, and we were lucky enough that we got him diagnosed at 18 months with early intervention and, a specialist nursery setting. He went into a specialist autistic school, but unfortunately he was in a class full of non-verbal children, and Dylan started to become a little bit more verbal, and he really craved friendships. So we moved him to a mainstream school, which he's in now. He's with full-time one-to-one support, but, he's very much part of the school environment and, our village, so it's really nice.
And how did you and Rianne come to work together?
Rianne and I met when Dylan was just diagnosed. She was working in speech therapy in the area that I was in, and we she is so very passionate about children on the spectrum, and she had so much advice to give me. I remember going to her asking how, would I potty train Dylan, or how would I do this? And she's a wealth of knowledge, and she helped me through some of the most difficult and darkest days that I've had. And so when I got the idea of writing Coming Home to Autism, I really wanted to make sure that I could help all families with a child on the spectrum. And obviously I know Dylan, and Dylan is verbal, but there are many children who are on the spectrum who are not verbal, and Rian is able to access them as well. She knew more about that than I did. So coming together, we thought the book would help, a whole range of families, not just children like Dylan.
Yes, she adds in each chapter a section by Rianne. Is that correct?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
It's a powerful partnership and a lovely, lovely book. Where can people get it?
You can buy it on Amazon. I know you can buy it on Amazon over in the States as well, or from Jessica Kingsley Publishing. And I think it's coming to a few bookshops in America too. I'm going to be coming over probably next year and doing a bit of a book tour over there as well.
Okay, great.
Fabulous. If
Coming
you're in
Home
the
to Autism, a room-by-room approach to supporting your child at home after ASD diagnosis, by Tara Liniston and Rianne Grounds.
And if you're in the LA area, when you're touring, come and let us know. We'll have you in the studio.
We'll have you in the studio. Have you come over.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd love to meet you both.
Okay, it would be lovely. Have a great day. Thank you so
Tara.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Really wonderful. So check that out. And that is Jessica Kingsley Publishers.
Right. Okay.
Wonderful. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back to close out the show. Stick with us.
Can you say hello? Say hello.
AJ?
Stop crying.
AJ, let's eat. Can you eat, AJ? Let's eat, son. Have a fry. My understanding of autism was very limited.
He would lick tires on cars, windows, you name it. And so we went to the 13-month checkup, and I remember our pediatrician, he said, well, he probably has autism. There's nothing you can do about it. Come back in a year when he's 3.
Our initial understanding of what the ABA program was basically all we picked up from this clinic in San Antonio.
He didn't pick up any signs the entire 8 months that he was there. I think the difference came when we changed vendors.
We were very impressed with the way that CARD actually gathered data to be able to quantify the progress that he was making. They have a curriculum that they follow that's tailored to each child. They were identifying AJ's strengths and weaknesses.
We were finally starting to see real progress.
Good, AJ. Here's eggs.
The first thing CARD did for us was, I remember the first time AJ said, "Mommy, I want you." And that was the most wonderful thing ever. There's hope.
Yeah,
That's when I knew that there was hope. I never thought that AJ would be able to say that. It was like a gift from God. It was so fantastic.
With CARD, we got him enrolled in a private school.
And he was in a typical classroom. He would go from activity to activity. He could sit when he was supposed to sit. He could be around typical kids. The goal is for CARD to work themselves out of a job. It's for AJ to be in a mainstream classroom with no help, and he's functional and he's learning. We're really grateful to all of the therapists. AJ would not be where he is without them, and we will never be able to repay the part of themselves that they gave to him to make his life better and to make our lives better.
And we're back, and you were just describing to me, you have a guest on tomorrow.
Yes, I'm very excited. Judith Feldman is going to be on tomorrow, and we've never had her on the show before, which is bizarre to me, because we've had her son on the show before.
Who is her son?
Her son is known as the rapper Soul Shaka. Rio Wiles is his name, but he goes by Soul Shaka. He performs pretty much any autism event we go to. They have booked Soul Shaka there, and he gets up and does rap, and he gets the audience riled. And the stuff that he says when he's rapping it's pretty amazing. You've seen him perform, haven't you?
I've seen him perform once,
I don't know. I have gotten to know him a little bit, and he's one of the most lovely, gentle souls that there is. But at first glance, you look at him and you go, "Oh, it's a rapper," right? Like, because he dresses and looks like a rapper and whatever. Then you find out that he's on the spectrum, and I think a lot of times, I'm gonna cop to this myself. You know, it's like, "Ooh, I don't know where he is on the spectrum, so I don't know what he's capable of." And maybe in an initial conversation with him, it would be easy to miss the huge intelligence that is there, and the fact that he can improvise and talk about things that are political or just social in a huge way on stage with thousands of people watching. He's brilliantly talented. Let's just say that. And I have known his parents through being at events and little things, little sort of hiccupy things that happen. Like one of the performances that I was at when it was the Temple Grandin and Friends, it was at the Nokia? Yeah. And I had to leave to go out to get something, and I had a press pass, and his dad was outside trying to get in with a tripod because they wanted to film Soul Shaka's performance, and they weren't letting him in with the tripod. They were like, "No, tripods are not allowed." You know, it's that kind of that rule stuff that makes me crazy. And I didn't know who he was, but he was standing there saying, "But I'm just trying to get in there to do the thing." And they said, "Nope, you can't come in." And he stepped back, and I walked through, and I said, "Give it to me." and he was like, "What? Who are you?" And I said, I don't know who you are either, but give it to me. I have a press pass. I'll walk in with it. Just meet me inside." And we didn't know each other or anything.
So that was the dad, though.
That was the dad, but Mom was there too. But so we kind of connected then, had connected several times over different things. And then, Mom had said to me, had I read her book? I didn't know she had a book.
And it's called The Myth.
It's called The Myth. And this book has been kicking Mike Easter 68 ways from Sunday.
It's very philosophical and...
Well, it's very metaphysical. She's a very spiritual person, and it's not just a memoir about her and her son. Like the first half of the book, you sort of dive in and you're living the world through her eyes, this very metaphysical person who receives messages from the universe and says, "I think I better do this." And this sort of roller coaster ride that she's going through, and deep inner feelings that she's going through. But then she starts to do some research on some myths that we all believe in about what our place is in the world. I'm not even, it's kicking my keister.
Okay, it sounds really interesting.
And it's very spiritual,
and how much of it is actually about her journey with autism?
You know what? It's a side thing, but it's through the whole thing. I mean, it really is about her discovering herself and her place in the world, but also coming to acceptance about her role of the mother of a child with autism. It's not about that, but it's deeply woven throughout it.
Right.
But I'm telling you, she's on the show tomorrow.
All right, well then I'm going to tune in.
Right? Because I
wanna
can't
hear
wait
about
to
it. I
talk
wanna
to
read
her
the
about
book.
it. It is, and I was saying to her the other day, I've been talking to everybody about it. I'm like, a bunch of people need to read this book because I need a book club to talk about all the things that I need to talk about. Anyway, so she's going to be on the show tomorrow, plus a bunch of other things. We might have a surprise guest on tomorrow. We're still working out whether the time change works.
Okay.
But then we're also going to be talking about a few other things and answering all the questions that you guys have written in because we haven't had much time for that. And then next week we're going to be showing some best of because I'm not here all next week except for
we have an hour together.
Yes. So on Wednesday you're going to see the best of Dr. Doreen, but then you're going to see a live hour with Nancy and I with great guests.
Right.
But I'm going to be Skyping in.
Okay.
For part of it.
Okay, great.
So that's what's happening next week. How much time do we have left, Samantha?
30 seconds. So
all
we
right,
really don't have much
perfect.
time.
We really don't have much time at all. But I want to thank our great guests today and
these
thank
great
you.
books. Yeah.
And hope everybody's having a really good summer and stay cool.
We're in a heat wave here in Los Angeles.
And I know other people are having rain.
Right.
Stay safe.
Crazy weather.
Crazy weather.
Global
Try to find a way to enjoy, right? All right. Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.